Hong Kong's declining birth rate has prompted calls for the government to bolster the city's fertility services. During yesterday's Legislative Council question and answer session, concerns were raised over the high cost of private sector-assisted reproductive treatments, which many couples cannot afford. To discuss, we're joined on the line by DAB lawmaker Nixie Lam. Good morning, Ms. Lam.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us on the programme. So, what factors do you think are contributing to Hong Kong's declining birth rate?
I think other than the medical matters, a lot of other issues about including like the afterbirth support from the families, and also the environment, whether it is easy to have babies, whether people will be able to take care of the baby after they have the babies and stuff like that, are other factors that actually affect them. And on top of that, a lot of the women, in Hong Kong, if you graduated from university and then find a job, building your career, it's pretty much if you have your baby, if you get married, you'll be in your mid-30s already. So if you're in that age, like after 35, you're already like a pretty high risk to have a baby already. So, the timing is basically delayed for modern women these days. So, a lot of the things that will affect the successful rates to have babies and also the economic pressures and stuff like that. So, we think encouraging the government to support, like the all-rounded support, including what we mentioned yesterday about the medical side, whether we can support them to have early checkings on their body conditions in early 20s to make sure that they know whether their body is okay, whether they have like cysts or anything in their bodies, and they can remove in the early stage so they wouldn't regret when they find out it's too late and stuff like that. So, but it's actually quite unfortunate, like the answer from the secretary yesterday, they're saying, well, they wouldn't intervene. Intervene is the word that they were using. They wouldn't intervene the family planning for the families like that.
Now, you just briefly talked about kind of government support measures. How effective are the government's current measures, and is there anything that can be done to make it more effective?
Well, currently, there's a lot of things that we can do. If you look at the policies that's doing around on IVF, like only for the storage of the eggs, right, in Hong Kong, the longest time you can store your eggs is 10 years. So imagine if a woman, she's in her mid-20s, it's pretty much that wouldn't be their priority. They wouldn't think about, well, I need to save my eggs for babies or stuff like that. They would think about, well, how should I build my career? How should I find a boyfriend or husband or things like that? And maybe on a later stage, then your eggs wouldn't be like so good already. Even though you store your egg in your 20s, you have to find a husband to get married to use your egg, because the law says you have to get married before you use the egg in Hong Kong for IVF procedures. Then, in that timing, comparing to, say, UK, you have 50 years time spans to actually think about when is the best time to use the eggs for the medical procedures and things like that. So policies like that, I think, it's not only about money, whether you're subsidizing a huge amount of money to support financially, but a lot of other policies that you can actually help and support the women to have better flexibilities on the decisions, and or some early educations as well. As I mentioned, a lot of the young women wouldn't aware that they need to have a better checking on the bodies and better preparations and things like that until it is a bit too late in Hong Kong in the situation. So I think the government really needs to step up a lot, not only on one bureau, of course, as I mentioned, a lot of other policies, which is actually spending on other 3 or 4 other departments and the bureaus to make sure that they can actually show the women that while the government is supporting you, we hope that it is a good environment for you guys to have babies.
Do we have the resources to extend the storage of frozen eggs?
We do. I mean, at the moment, well, it's actually quite sad. Well, at the moment is that if you go to private clinics, you don't really need to wait at the moment. Well, I'm actually pregnant at the moment. I'm on 32 weeks at the moment.
Congratulations.
It took me about more than $200,000 to do the IVF procedures. But I can at least meet my doctors immediately, right? But what happens is if you go to public hospital, the first consultation will take you 18 months to visit your doctor. So imagine if you are, say, you are like 36 or 38 or whatever, and you figure out, well, maybe there's some problem in my body. I need to do some IVF procedures to see whether it's okay for me to fertilize in that way. Then, well, the first time you have to wait is like 18 months. So that will actually prolong your probability to have babies because every year after 35, your probability to have baby or have healthier eggs is lower and lower and lower. So in that procedures, in that situation, imagine how a person that if they don't have enough money, it's quite sad. I went to a lot of the blogs and look at the mothers who are sharing. They save up money for IVF, and then they say, well, I've tried 3-4 times. I couldn't do it. I ran out of money. I can't do that anymore. Things like that. A lot of the stories like that. But as I mentioned before, we in the hospital facilities, we need to see whether we can capitalize a lot of the procedures at the moment and also documentations. I spoke to some of the experts in the IVF field. They mentioned about too much like forms and unnecessary data the government is actually harvesting, actually prolonging the whole procedures as well. I mean, and also a lot of the laws and legislation is actually quite outdated. The latest updated time is 2013. So it's about 10 years time already. So a lot of things, the things the government actually can do to make sure that we are actually focusing in the situation. If you look at even mainland, the infertility rate actually hiked at around 2.5 to recently 12% in about 10, 20 years. So the situation is basically a global problem. A lot of the countries were actually are helping their citizens to reproduce. But like the WHO actually declared infertility as a disease, but Hong Kong didn't really accept that. If you look at countries like USA, they use insurance to do the support. UK, Canada, Australia, they're using like government subsidized. I'm pretty sure like Hong Kong's government will have some sort of money to subsidize in a bit and contribute a bit in that field.
Now, you mentioned a role that government could play, but also that is also a policy issue, but also a cultural issue. What role do you think employers can play in supporting working parents and promoting a family-friendly culture in Hong Kong?
Yeah, that is something that I mentioned in the previous meeting as well. I think at the moment in Hong Kong, a lot of the companies still didn't really accept people to work like a part-time sort of way. I've been speaking to some of the large corporations to encourage them to run out a program for females, like after they have babies, maybe in the first few years, they wouldn't want to work full-time. They still want to take care of baby, but they wouldn't want to cut their career path. So in that way, if you can provide part-time roles for them in a more supportive ways, or sometimes even for large corporations, if they have a space to have like childcare facilities for their young kids, then it will be like a safe place for them to work there safely, having their baby taken care, and wouldn't need to stop their whole career path on that way. So I think in Hong Kong women are very career-oriented, right? So I'm still working very well with South and Weldon every day. So I think a lot of women's, one of the big concerns is that I wouldn't want to stop my job for a few years and then it will be hard for them to go back to their career. So a lot of support like that, and that sort of support, as I mentioned, if the government encourages the corporates to run it that way, you can basically do it like a CSR program, right? It's just like a social responsibility, make it like a Hong Kong brand or something. So you wouldn't use much of the government government funding. So just encouraging corporate to tweak it a little bit, make it their policy to see like women welcome and things like that. So it wouldn't bear too much money from the government side, of course.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you for joining us this morning. That was DAB lawmaker Nixie Lam.